Hey guys, this is Adam Gussow with a lesson. I'm coming to you from, oh man, we are out in the woods in northern Mississippi, where I currently live, where I've been living for 17 years. I thought I'd take you out into the countryside to talk about something that every single blues harmonica player that I know has dealt with at some point, which is stage fright. Somebody emailed me and said, would you think about doing a lesson on stage fright? And I thought, I know all there is to know. That might not be apparent because it doesn't seem like I'm particularly nervous when I'm on stage talking to you. That's an achieved excellence. It's not something that comes naturally. So it's a universal thing. Everybody goes through it. In order to get over stage fright, it's going to turn out that stage fright is a spiritual challenge, but it's also a practical challenge. And I think most people don't really understand that it's both of those things and that you need to work on both of those fronts if you want to conquer stage fright. So I'm going to be, really what it is, in a sense, is you are going and confronting and slaying a monster. Now, it may seem strange to talk about it that way because, after all, where's the monster? Is the monster the crowd that's waiting out there to think you've done a bad job? Is it the thing inside of you that says, you're terrible, you can't do this? Is it some version of all those? Is it a place where all those mingle together and suddenly, we should talk about what stage fright is. We can't really talk about how to confront it and deal with it if we don't know what it is. So what is stage fright? Well, obviously the word fright is in it, so it's a kind of fear. And that's part of what I'm going to be talking about, is how do we encounter, feel, and deal with fear in a skillful way. And by the way, I may be using some language that's not the language you expect a blues harmonica player to use. That's because in my other life, for a couple of years, I was sort of a new age guy, and I've gone to, I go to those workshops, those self-empowerment workshops from time to time. So some of that language is actually worked in, and it's partly because it's helped. It's helped. So we're going to be slaying that monster that is stage fright. Obviously the word fright, but also the word stage. Public. I'm in public. I am doing something not privately, but out in the open, and everybody can critique it. And that's, so stage fright manifests. Let me tell you how it manifested for me. And let's talk about a primal scene, a sort of thing you've got to deal with at some point. A crux, a crossroads. Where does stage fright hit blues harmonica players most powerfully the first time? And I think for most of us, it was our first jam session or our first sitting in opportunity. That moment when you go from being, the person with the wannabe with the harmonica in your hand, somebody who feels that in private they can do some pretty good stuff, to the person who's suddenly trying, number one, to fuse your energies with a bunch of other people, which is to say a band or a jam session group, a piano player on the ocean liner. Who knows where you're going to sit in for the first time or jam for the first time in public, and the audience. So, and so the stage is, there's the people that are with you making music, stage fright. Maybe it's a talent show. Maybe you're getting up there all alone. That's a different kind of thing. So I said it's a spiritual challenge and it's a practical challenge. And in the course of this video, I am going to help you deal with both. Let's talk about the spiritual challenge. What is the opposite of fear? If you wanted to conquer stage fright, what's the opposite of fear? The standard New Age thing would be to say the opposite of fear is love, but that's also Jesus, right? Perfect love casteth out perfect fear. Okay. So when I think about this, I think about open-heartedness, and I think about the word cœur, C-O-E-U-R, French word for heart, coronary. I think in word origins. And Richard the Lionhearted. What does courage have to do with an open heart? Courage, cœur, is heart. Courage comes from your heart. So one of the places you should be looking when you're trying to deal in spiritual terms with the fear that is stage fright is your heart. Now, there's a famous guy, a psychologist named Alexander Lowen, wrote a book called Bioenergetics, and I'd encourage you to go and find those. What he does is he talks about what happens to your body parts, when you're experiencing certain powerful feelings. And when you're experiencing fear, your heart shuts down. That's why courage comes from an open heart. So how might we fool our heart into opening? I'm going to give you some really practical, crazy ideas right now. And we're about to get out on that stage. We're about to get out in that jam session. It's your turn. They're waving you over. They're giving you the mic. Wait a minute. I want to pause for a sec. Why do harmonica players have a particular proximity to stage fright? You know why? Because the harmonica is the smallest instrument. We're very small. It's intimate. But it's the one that if you give somebody a microphone plugged into a PA, it's the biggest sound. So in a certain respect, we have to deal with the challenge of going from small and closely handheld to big, audience-dominating sound. And I think that's intimidating. So our brain can help us figure this out. But what about some strategies for that moment when you're there and you know you're panicking and you can feel it, and panic tends to build on panic? What are some things you could do, or what could you be doing the moment before you get on that stage? In my experience, there's a couple of different things. Substitute positives for negatives. So substitute gratitude, which is that sort of abundance theology, gratitude. What am I grateful for? For scarcity. I don't have enough. What's the voice in your head saying when you get to that first jam session? I don't have enough talent. I don't. First thing you do is you could say, thanks a lot, Gussow. It's all your fault that I'm standing here getting ready to do my first jam session. Now, what I've just done is I've combined 3 different ways of substituting positives for negatives. Number 1 is gratitude. Thank me, even if you're being ironic. Thanks, Gussow. Thanks a lot. If it wasn't for you, humor. Substitute humor for excess self-seriousness, excess, oh God, this is my big life drama and it's all happening right now and I'm about to go down in flames. Just try to lighten up a little. And humor's great, and the reason humor works is because it undercuts the ego. It undercuts what Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now calls the egoistic consciousness. It's sort of as though it's all about you. How about, thanks a lot, Gussow. And finally, open heart. The open heart instead of a constricted heart. How do you do that? Well, one of my favorite techniques, and this is true whether I'm standing on the starting line of a 5 or 10K race, or getting ready to play, when I'm a little bit, even I get occasional stage fright. How do I open that heart? Well, you want to think about something, obviously, that arouses emotion in you. And I mean real emotion. I mean throat emotion. I mean that throat chakra, that lump in the throat that we talk about when you love somebody or something. And so here's one. How about this? How about, I'm scared as hell. That's the other thing, is to be conscious, to be fully present, and say, I'm scared as hell. I'm scared. And sometimes you can just laugh when you say that. I'm scared as hell. I can't believe Gussow got me this far. You're standing on the board and you're about to jump in, right? I can't believe Gussow's doing this to me. I can't believe. And then think about this. You could be dead. You could be dead right now. You could have had that car wreck. Cancer could have gotten you the way it got your friend or your mom or your dad or your brother. Something horrible could have happened, but it didn't. And you got to bring your life to this point right now. Now, if I phrase it in those terms, that all, the people who are dead and gone, the people who are in pain, the people and here you are being graced with the chance to share something of who you are. You didn't think that you'd ever get to this place. You didn't even think you'd pick up a harmonica. You can't believe you've gotten to this place. That might transform the situation from, I don't have enough talent to do this, to, I'm going to just do it and see what happens. And so those 3 things, substituting 3 positives for 3 negatives: gratitude for scarcity, which is to say thank you, rather than, I can't believe I'm being imposed upon by this fear that's... Humor for over-seriousness, lightens the ego, and an open heart for a constricted heart. Think about, if you want to use humor, my favorite version of that is in the movie Ed Wood, about the famous Hollywood horror movie director. He made terrible movies, and the film has Johnny Depp playing Ed Wood, and somebody goes up to him and say, about his first movie, and they say, that was the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. And Ed Wood has this saving virtue. He sort of goes, well, the next one will be better. And I'd encourage you to bring that along with you to that first jam session. The Ed Wood approach. You know, I might go down in flames, but got to get it out of the way. Got to pop my cherry. So that's the spiritual element of this. That's the spiritual element. Okay? Those are things you could do. Now let's talk about what does it mean that you're going to be going and slaying a monster. What do I mean when I talk about that? Well, the thing about the monster is the monster's unknown. There's a moment in the movie Saving Private Ryan when the men are all exhaustedly, they've crossed that bridge and they're basically setting up this village knowing that the Germans, the Nazis are incoming at some point. They don't know when. And so they set it up, they have all their explosives, and they're going to try to basically blow up the town around the Nazis and take them on. But they know that they're massively out-machined, out-armed, out-manned. And you don't know when that thing is going to, and suddenly you hear the rumble. That's the monster. That rumble, it's a monster partly because you don't know what it is. And so when you get on stage at your first jam session, that monster is the energy field, the fear. It's an unknown that's suddenly very present and scary because it's not something you've been through. Or maybe it's something you've been through every time. So one of the ways of fighting that monster is by doing what I call reducing the unknowns. And there's two key elements of that. Most people think in terms of one, but I'm going to suggest two. So one is the woodshed. In other words, which is to say, it's like race rehearsal or a performance rehearsal, which is to say, you need to do some homework so that you're prepared for what's going to come up musically. Entirely apart from everything else that's going to come up, you got to have done your homework. So one of the best ways of avoiding stage fright is simply putting in a lot of time, practicing. But specifically, playing along with tapes, playing along with jam tapes, being able to play a shuffle blues in G, so that when the band says, what do you want to play, you're prepared to play it. It may also mean going to the jam session a couple of times before you get up and keeping a notebook and finding out what songs and what keys people are playing. Again, what we're doing is we're reducing the unknowns so that when that rumble comes and the Nazi army is out there, right, you have a better idea of what's coming at you. That's what, the intelligence up there is telling you what's coming at you. So you gotta normalize what could be a frightening situation. Go to the jam session a few times before sitting in. That will reduce the unknowns. So woodshedding is a key element. You should make sure that you can play along with jam tapes in the privacy of your own home woodshed. That's number one. But number two is actually I'm going to give you a lesson that a friend of my family's gave me. I had been playing on the street in Harlem for 5 years, and Satan and Adam had just been picked up, my duo, just been picked up, and we were just about to go on tour in 10 different cities in the UK with Bo Diddley. We're going to be opening for Bo Diddley in 1,000-seat auditoriums and on big festival stages. This was new for me. And I had a friend of the family who brought me over to his house. He's an actor. Had actually a famous soap opera role as a kind of dark, brooding, kind of good and bad guy that the women loved. Friend of the family. And he put me in his living room. He had a big house. He put me in his living room. And he stood out there. He stood out there. He was the audience for me. So he stood out there. And I stood here with my harmonica. Hands clasped. I mean, I'm holding this with my hand, obviously, but hands clasped to my mouth, pretending I had a mic in my hand. And he said, look up. Because Alexander Lowen, bioenergetics, when we get nervous, when our heart shuts down, harmonica players, we tend to close up. All right. Do you tend to close up? Because I know I do. And so he said, take a deep breath. Open up. Open up your chest. Just stand. Own the space. Own the space. I thought, good, okay, good, because I tend to, when I'm playing hard, own the space. And then he said, play to me. Again, he was out there. He was out 10 or 15 feet. And so I played to him, looking at him, lifting my head. And then he walked over to the left as my eyes were looking. So he was sort of in the left corner. He walked over, so 45 degrees away. And he said, play to me over there. So I did that, played to him there. And then he moved across, it's 90 degrees, so he moved at 45 to the middle, 45 to here, maybe even a little further, but definitely at least 45. So that there was at least a 90-degree thing. He was on the left, now he's going right. And he said, play to me over there. And so I played to him over there. And then he said, now you own the room. He goes, play to that whole space. And then open it up even further. And play to it. And keep your head up. And so I did that. You know, what's it going to, I'm in a room with him, one other person, but I'm experimenting. You can do this experiment at home. So when I got to London, and we're playing a 1,000-seat theater in London, I practiced that enough. I had practiced that not just that day, but other times in the week that was in between. And I was able to take a deep breath and get present all of a sudden, have enough presence of mind to say, here I am. So I'm not afraid. And so I owned the stage. I was able to look out, but if I hadn't practiced that, we know what I would have done. We know what you would have done. You would have been just in here, right? So that practice is extremely, and again, it's reducing the unknown. To do that practice is to say, so that when the people are in the theater, when they're in the seats, you could, I'm just going to show you. I'm here sort of at a park in Oxford, Mississippi. Here's a big space. If I wanted to, I could stand where I'm standing here. I'm going to do that. And I could play to the left. I could imagine that there were people there. Field of dreams. Play to the middle. Play to the right. And I could move. And I could move while I'm playing. And I could move around on stage, right? I could move left. I could move right. Do all that kind of stuff, right? As practice. I'm reducing the unknowns. What did I say? That was one of the key things. The monster is partly the unknown. Reduce the unknown. So another thing, obviously, is another way of reducing the unknown is what cognitive behavioral therapy tries to do, if you've heard that term, which is put you in an overload situation repeatedly, show you that the world doesn't end, and eventually it'll become much less stressful. So go to your first jam session, go to a second jam session, go to a third jam session, busk on the street, the more different kinds of gigs. That used to always impress me about professional musicians. They'd walk into a little restaurant or something and they just set up. They look like they're not even conscious that they know people are there, but they're not thinking about, ooh, there's people. The people no longer oppress them. Same thing's true for college professors. When I first lectured to a big 120-person auditorium, it's a little bit oppressive. You can almost lose your voice. Here's one of the things I learned from lecturing, which can be extremely useful. And it goes right back to the spiritual aspect, which is gratitude. So if you're religious, if you believe in God, you can say, thank you, God, for putting me here and giving me something to share with people. You see how that gratitude thing might work? First of all, it might open your heart, then the courage, coronary, Richard the Lionhearted, that comes out, defeats fear. Thank you, Lord. Or just, thank you, universe. Thank you, God. Thank you. Thanks, Adam, for putting me here, right? You live a bigger, happier life. So there's one more thing, which I haven't talked about, which was really useful to me. And by the way, it should go without saying, you may not do great in your first jam session. The fear might be there anyway. You are much more like, the people who watch you are much more likely, first of all, to appreciate that you did the best you could. It's rare that they just go, boo, boo, go home, but that could happen. I suppose it could happen. I don't think it's ever really happened to me, but occasionally it could happen. It happened once when I was giving a best man's toast, believe it or not. I went on too long at a wedding. Why don't you just say he loves her? I got heckled giving a best man speech. So, I've gone down and in flames my share of times. But here's one more thing that makes a difference, that can make a difference, which is knowing that alcohol counterbalances adrenaline. Adrenaline being sort of the fear drug, right? You're over-adrenalized, you're really too much energy, right? Alcohol, so here's what I would say is definitely, if you can judiciously deploy alcohol in the service of relaxing, it may get just to the point where you've got lots of energy, you're still precise, as opposed to sloppy drunk. That's not good, never good. But you just have to be aware of exactly, you have to know your body well enough to know that you've got how much adrenaline's working for you. And that technique is not going to work over the long run because eventually you're not going to have that much adrenaline and you're just going to be sloppy drunk. So, not a great technique. Okay, I hope that works for you. That's what I have to share. What I'll tell you is that it does get better over time. It is a lot like learning how to jump into a pool full of cold water. At a certain point, you just have to jump. It's never quite as bad as you think. Unless you're in, you know, the Danish Sea, I suppose, at which point it probably is as bad as you think. But in general, that jump is never quite as bad as you think. But there's that baptismal moment when your body's going, wah! And you have to ride with it. Just remember, gratitude. Gratitude is a great way. Open your heart. I could be dead and gone. I could be 6 feet in the ground. But here I am. Guess what? I know I'm alive because I'm nervous. Isn't that great? That's something I often say to myself when and if anxiety hits. That's one way of knowing you're alive. It could be worse. Okay? Hope that helped. And if you have other things you think I should talk about on this Blues Harmonica channel, please let me know in the comments section. See you down the road. Bye-bye. Oh, one more thing. Make sure you warm up before you get on stage for that jam session. I didn't do that before I started playing the harp in that little thing. Before this video, I didn't warm up at all. And I made a few mistakes. Can you hear them? Because I could certainly hear them. Let's see. Ugh. Uh-oh. I got a flat note. Bye-bye.